Hello, everyone. It's so good to have you here on my show. We've been having some great conversations about what it looks like to thrive in life and not just keep putting up with surviving. So, one of the things we really want to talk about today is how do we help our children not just survive life, but to thrive in life? And this is an important conversation. We have with us here today Natalie. She is my podcast producer and my content editor. She does such a great job managing all of the communications in my company. And so, Natalie, it's just fun to have you here. Tell us
Thank
a
you.
little bit about why you're here.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. So
Uh-huh.
I think this podcast really grew out of a conversation that we had talking about our raising kids. I'm a
Mhm.
mom of four, and I think that we have challenges as parents and need support. And so you and I started talking about just the challenges our kids were having. And I think we started talking, then we were like, wait a minute, we need to do a podcast on this. Everybody, I think this is good. This is good stuff here. And so one of the main things that we talked about, though, that was interesting was about anxiety in our children
Mhm.
and, how to handle that as a parent, but also how our teachers handle it.
Mhm.
How do educators handle anxious students and what they can do and what they might be struggling with. So I guess we're coming at this from two perspectives.
Mhm.
I think on this episode, we're going to focus on the educators, and then we'll record another episode where we can talk about from the perspective of parents.
Mhm. Yeah, the educators, boy, they're some of my favorite leaders. As a leadership coach, some of my favorite leaders in our society are educators because they're shaping young minds, they're influencing the next generation. Anything we can do to support the leadership development of our educators is really important to me. And I think that's part of what we wanted to talk about. I used to teach. I have K-8 professional clear credential, and I've got a master's in education, and I train teachers. So that was a lot of my first start, probably the first 20 years of my career. And as I work as a leadership coach, I feel like I always have an eye looking back over at education, saying, how are our educators doing? How is our faculty doing? What can I do to support them? So I think this is a bit of a focus on anything I can do to rally around our educators who are working hard. And as many of our parents got to experience the work they do in COVID, many parents around me, I don't know if you heard about this, Natalie, too, they were all just singing the teachers' praises because they were trying to homeschool for the first time, realizing this is so much harder than I realized.
Yes.
So,
Well, during COVID, we decided to try homeschool ourselves. It was something I always wanted to do and thought I'll never have time. I don't have the patience. So we tried it, and actually I've loved homeschooling. We're wrapping up our second year, and it's been, the kids have been so patient with me because I'm not necessarily very organized, or I'm too soft in some areas and too hard on other areas. But yeah, it was a whole another level of respect for just how much work goes into the planning,
yeah.
and the different little personalities.
Hmm.
Having, everybody learns differently, and so yeah, all new respect for that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just jump in here. I think it's probably great to give a little context of what I used to do as an educator, and then Natalie chime in. And I know there were some questions you wanted to ask of me that might help our listeners get a feel for this. But I started out in elementary school teaching little cute third graders. They were just precious, third, fourth, and fifth. It's a great way to start education. I then we moved over to East LA, and I jumped into an at risk community of junior high students. I had about 140 students, and I taught seventh and eighth grade language arts and drama. And that's where I got exposed to really the mental health of our children. It was an eye opener to me as an educator. It's something that really changed me, not only as a human being, but as a leader in our community. And they taught me as much as I taught them, but I realized we have to be stepping into this conversation more. How do we support our educators? How do we support our children? What is it that they're looking for? And this is what I began to realize. They are looking to feel safe.
Mhm.
And all of my teaching credential classes. I came in all nicely prepped. I had all my little lesson plans and everything. And
Yeah.
I just had to throw them out the window. I was met with so much adversity, so many challenges that I had never in my lifetime encountered, much less as a child. Everything from gang violence to family deaths. The majority of my students had already experienced a death of somebody from a violent manner, typically
Mm.
from gang violence. Drugs and alcohol, the poverty, the socioeconomic disparity just in our school systems. All of this was such a shock to me moving into this region, and I began to realize the work that I had done had only partially prepared me as an educator. The other piece was all about really supporting the mental wellness and the emotional wellness of our children and making sure that they felt empowered to take on life and educated so that I could get them into high school and we could start breaking the cycle of poverty. So I was holding this constant tension of preparing them intellectually. I'm not saying that we just created a kumbaya circle and had a little therapy session all the time, but how do you offer comfort and safety and get them ready for high school so they break the cycle of poverty? That was a constant challenge that I had to really make sure I held on to. And I'm not saying I did it well all the time, but anything I can offer, I want to put out there. One of the first things I began to realize is if they don't feel safe, they can't learn. So instinct taught me, and this is where I want to just really affirm all our educators. You have good instinct. You're the ones in the classroom. You know what those babies need. You know what those children need. Follow your instinct, not 100% the district lines, not 100% of all curriculum instruction. Follow your instinct. Your instinct is telling you things. My instinct was saying these children need to feel safe. The way I did it was I reduced all stimuli. I wanted them to feel safe, even if it was for only 1 hour a day, they were going to feel safe in Mrs. Penny's classroom. So I remember dimming the lights, playing classical music, and for the first 10 minutes of every class period. The other thing too is I began to realize how much art heals. Without engaging the right side of the brain, which is what art does, we don't have the capacity to be able to emotionally heal. So what I wanted to do was give them an emotional resiliency to start recognizing they can self-soothe, they can create the resiliency they need, and they can heal from the trauma that they've incurred, that they've all and they're even living in. So many of them were showing so much signs of stress, and what I wanted them to feel was you're safe. So the first 10 minutes, you're going to hear beautiful classical music. The lights are going to be dimmed and you get to draw whatever you want. My only rule was no talking. And to see them starting to relax and feel safe, then I would gently turn on the lights and we'd move right into the literature piece that I was reading, or move right into poetry writing that we were doing, or moving into essay writing. One of the exciting things that happened during this time was we went from a 30% passing rate to a 70% passing rate, getting them ready for high school.
Wow.
I'm not going to say that's all because of the music and the art. What I am going to say is when we can get our children in a safe place, do everything in our capacity in a safe place, then we have earned the right or the ability to step into teaching them. They're ready then to learn because their brain isn't on fight or flight. And so I didn't leave the lights off for, the duration of the full hour period. I left the lights off for 10 minutes, dim the lights and the classical music for the first 10 minutes, because that's what I'm realizing that they needed. And then more importantly, they needed to know that they got that every time they entered my classroom. Because I knew what some of the homes they were coming from. I knew the lives that they were trying to live. That was the only thing I knew. That was not in any of my teaching credential background. It wasn't in anything that anyone ever prepared me for. I just knew it would probably feel violent to the soul and to the mind to step straight into teaching. This idea and following this instinct has carried me on throughout life. Now, as a leadership coach and working in corporate America and working with private individuals and doing personal coaching, following this instinct of what the human spirit needs has been one of my favorite things to offer this world. And so that's the call I just want to just gently put out there to our educators. You're doing such amazing work in there. How we step into really addressing the spirit of our children. I just want to keep saying, I think you know, and I want to encourage you, keep doing it. Keep doing it. And more importantly, I see you. I see you because many of you are doing it and no one else sees you. And I know you're doing it day in, day out. So I guess that's a little bit of why I could start. Any thoughts on that, Natalie?
Yeah, I was just thinking, even for kids who don't have any mental issues, maybe they're
Mhm.
just very well-rounded kids. Just I think that it's so difficult the way the system's set up that they go to 7 periods or however many, 5,
Mhm.
6, 7 periods for 48 minutes a piece. And, in between, for my kids, the two older ones who went to public school, just the 5-minute period between classes was so stressful because you have to go to your locker, or for
Mhm.
them, they didn't have the time to go to their locker. So their book bags had 9 books in them,
Mhm.
you have to find time to use the restroom, get water,
Mhm.
and get across the building. And that's,
Mhm.
happening every 48 minutes.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not traumatizing, but it's certainly putting a lot of pressure on our little ones to to make it. And then when they do arrive, are they
Mhm.
scattered? I mean, I don't know. I would be, and then to move into, okay, now
Mhm.
to be fair, the teachers also, I'm sure, are feeling a lot of pressure
Mhm.
too, because they have
Mhm.
a curriculum and they have only certain number of minutes and
Mhm.
days to teach it. And so um it's difficult. So what would you say to the teacher who might be listening to this and saying, I'd love to have 10 minutes to just have this chill time with my kids, but there's no way I can cover the material. And they're bringing a level of, anxiety to it, knowing that they need to cover a certain amount of material.
Yeah, I totally know that crunch. Boy, do I ever know that crunch. 10 minutes, there's no magic number with 10 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. I will say give your kids some sort of transition between periods. If you're an all inclusive classroom, recognizing the transition between subject areas can also be wearing on the soul. But letting your children, letting the students feel the pacing and the rhythm of it that allows them to take a breath and exhale is so important. I know my older daughter in high school, I think it was her sophomore teacher, teaches French. She got the calming app. And it's an app on you can buy through the iPhone and it's called Calm. And she literally would play meditative music in the classroom. And again, what I began to recognize, my first of all, my daughter loved it. She's a highly sensitive student, so she loved it, knowing that she felt safe in this classroom and teaches French. But was more important is she was teaching the kids how to self-soothe and that they had the permission to find their peace and their calm. That's
Mhm.
such an important thing to teach our children. And if we never teach them that, and we teach them that they just have to keep up with the pack, you can see how that keeps them in fight or flight. And they never get the opportunity to develop a whole new, no whole new repertoire of peaceful emotions like calm, peace, responding versus reacting, critical thinking. These are all things that we need in order to step into learning, being
Mhm.
able to calm the stimulate kind of internally and externally. And our educators, many of them are just naturally doing this. What I would say is keep doing it and then look at yourself. When you're stressed as an educator, which I was at times, I needed it more than my students did. Sometimes I'd be like, okay, everybody, we're going to have, just a couple minutes of everyone put your heads down. When I was with the little kids, I'd be like, okay, it's little heads time. It's a little time to rest. Sometimes it's more about me needing it than the kids needed it. When
Yeah.
it was the older students, it was, okay, we're going to just go ahead and dim the lights here from the classical. You guys know what to do. They knew exactly what to do. And it gave me just a beat. Sometimes I would feel that pressure, like we're getting ready for tests or essays, or I had to get them ready for college, high school exams. Oh my goodness, I know that pressure. Sometimes I wouldn't do the full 10 minutes, but even just a couple minutes just
Yeah.
allowed everyone to catch their breath. And I'll tell you, once you start it, you notice it when you don't do it. And the students will notice it too. They will
Mhm.
say, Mrs. Penny, when are we going to have our music? Where's our music time? Where's our dimmed lights? They become really acclimated to, I get to feel safe, and we're lowering just their stress level, the cortisol that's probably getting up between passing periods, or even just shifting from one subject area to the next.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, Natalie. I still have a reoccurring dream occasionally that I can't get my locker open. And I'm 52 years old, but I
Yeah.
still have that in high school. So as you said that, all of a sudden that dawned on me. I thought, that is a little bit of trauma trying to get to passing periods. And then I was
Yep.
even on site with my children's high schools. It was a back to school night. I was so stressed getting to their 7 or 8 classrooms I had to get to and
Oh,
follow
yeah.
the ringing bell. I
Yeah.
came home and just hugged them both. And I said, "Do you have to do this every day?" It was so stressful. I couldn't find all the classrooms. The campus was huge. I was trying to run and I realized I had 2 minutes to get from one class to the next. And they were putting us on the same schedule as the kids. And I thought,
Yep.
this is stressful.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
then if you go ahead.
I have dreams. I have, I have a couple of different dreams like that where I can't get the locker open or I've forgotten an assignment and I'm just, that moment of just utter dread that, oh man, like I
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah.
Now also I have these recurring dreams where I didn't pack my kids' lunch or I've got to get them to school and I'm late.
Yeah.
There's still a thread here, right? That
Yeah.
connects all these
Yeah.
dreams.
Well, and I think too, as I work with just leaders just all around the world, it's the same idea I want to keep calling out in people. We all need just a breather. I work with so many high achievers and they get on the line with me and they're like, help me stay up with my basically chaotic life. And I think I refuse because I already know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
And it takes me back to these teaching years where I learned about what the human spirit needs. And we can continue to push our kids, we can continue to push our employees, we can continue to push people. But I will tell you, it will eventually cost us. And
Yeah.
the cost is not what we want to pay. And that's where I say, going back to your question, 10 minutes. What's 10 minutes in a lesson plan when you're trying to soothe the spirit, especially if it's totally chaotic? And you'll feel it. Every teacher feels it. Instead of fighting it and trying to get them to stay quiet, I would say lean into, we need a little extra time. Some days it would go as far as 20 minutes. And there was this fear, oh my gosh, what if I don't get all the content in? I'm literally rearranging the lesson plan in my mind, but I know these kids need it because something just happened. And I actually did teach during Columbine. That was a time when I switched even my whole curricular area and we moved right into poetry. And I remember already, I mean, gosh, it was 30 years ago, 20, I don't know, several decades ago. We did a whole unit. I switched over into poetry and I put it into remembering your roots. And what I wanted them to do is each be able to find their voice and write in poetry and be able to talk about it. Moved them into journaling, being able to journal to myself. And they would have private entries where they would journal to me. Watching what the state of our world is doing and allowing ourselves to just adjust and adapt is so critical. And I believe the great educators are doing this so well and they're modeling to this. I would say keep doing this, keep doing more. Don't let the pressures of the curriculum instruction and everything else or the standards weigh you down. You instinctively know what your kids need in order to meet the standards so that they can pass the grade level.
That's great advice. I had two thoughts on that. One, just this idea of how the school is set up for the kids to just be, like in a flash in a pan with subjects all day long and rush and how that really does impact our culture and our when these kids go to college or when they get into the workplace, this uber productivity, this fast pace, this urgency with so much, it's in some kids that kind of gets ingrained. I know for me, I definitely felt I naturally fell into, oh, I can produce, let's produce. The more I produce, the better I feel. If I'm not producing, I don't feel good about myself. And I think if we could try, if there would be a way for educators to set the tone in schools so that wasn't being emphasized so much, it could just have these long-term
Mhm.
benefits.
Yeah, I love that. Set the tone. And I think the challenge, and I remember this when I was in the classroom too, the challenge to set the tone when you feel the pressure of the state really wanting to have certain standards and certain test results. I remember that pressure. Getting through a certain amount of curriculum. There's so many curriculum you cannot feasibly and successfully get through for the year. It doesn't matter how great someone spent time on doing this. It's a wonderful curriculum. I cannot do it all. Things like that really hit me when I was teaching. And I had to just gently set that aside and say, what is my heart telling me as an educator? I'm the one that has to show up with these kids every day. What do they need from me? That honed my instinct really well. And I still lean on that wherever I go. When I walk into a room to speak, what is it that these people need in front of me? When I walk into a organization, what do these employees need from me? When I work with educators, what are these educators facing? What is it that the challenges that they're facing and how can they overcome them? I think one of the lies, one of the false beliefs is they don't have as much power as they realize,
Mm.
or they've given a ton of their power over to state education. Um, I love the structure. Please hear me. I love the structure that our country offers for educators to be able to freely educate all our children. I value that highly. But again, you're the one in there dealing with those little people every day. What do those little people need? What is it that they're facing? And how do we integrate what they need to learn and hold that standard high, but integrate it with their emotional well being? And they don't train us in that as educators. They don't train us that. There's just the emphasis on the perfect lesson plan. We need probably more support and training in that. But I also want to just say, you get to trust yourself and do what feels right for you when you're working with those children, and your instinct is telling you something. Ask why. Stay curious. What is going on here? Sometimes I would stop everything and just read a story because I could sense their weariness. Oh my goodness, I could sense their weariness. I kept that series Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I would just read a story that just called out goodness, because
Mhm.
goodness and beauty is what soothes the soul as well. And I
Mhm.
just had tremendous compassion for some of the horrific things that these children are facing from such a young age. And I didn't want them to feel my despair of it or my hopelessness of it. I wanted them to feel like there was hope, even in spite of some of their circumstances.
Yeah, I that is a great segue into this last comment I wanted to just kind of talk with you about, and that is that at the time of this recording, we've just had a recent school shooting in Texas, and we're talking about the mental health of our kids, and we're talking about supporting our educators, and we have this layer now, this layer of anxiety that comes when a tragedy like this happens. And these teachers and kids are already dealing with a whole lot, and then they're hit with this violence, this
Mhm.
potential violence inside the classroom. And so one of the things I know about you is that you were a teacher during Columbine.
Mhm.
And so maybe you could just share with us some thoughts that you have about that level of maybe fear that they might be experiencing, and just thoughts on your experience of how you handled things.
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, I'll always say that there's a psychological counselors. There's psychological counselors that are on standby when these crises happen. And I would encourage always teachers to utilize them. I leaned heavily into them. We had some great school counselors on site during that year. The time that I taught there, we actually had Columbine happen, and then we actually had a teacher, faculty member commit suicide.
Mm,
So it was a very violent time
mm,
they were surrounded with, and I could feel the hopelessness. And I think one of the things as educators is, just like I think about myself as a parent, it really is our job to say it's going to be okay, and we got this, and we're going to figure this out. We're not going to ignore the horrific world that we're living in. We're not going to act like it didn't happen. um, it's not my job as an educator to be your counselor, but it's my job to at least see the signs and then get you to the right resources that you need. And
mm,
that's the gentle pressure that I want to take off teachers sometimes that feel like they have to be counselors. You don't have to be counselors. You just get to see the signs, and then you get to put them in touch with the school resources that they need. And at the same hand, you may not step into it with the conversation with them, but when a child is struggling, without saying anything, you can change the curriculum. And and I remember you can change the pace, or what was the term you used earlier, Natalie? The tone in the classroom. You can change the tone. So when I picked up on despair, hopelessness, massive amounts of fear, because it was all happening at once. These are, an adult, a faculty member who shot herself, and a very beloved educator. What do you do with that? You just, and we really don't have the right to speak to that on a very vocal level as educators. It could do more damage, and we're trained that. So we're gently trying to navigate it, but also making sure that the right people are talking to them about some of these really hard issues. So without even having to say anything, I quickly did a reassessment of my curriculum. And at the time, we were teaching Romeo and Juliet. Now, this is the dumbest unit. I got rid of it. I got rid of the whole thing. And because it's, they both ends with a child suicide at the end. And I brought in outsiders, and that's just one example. I thought that it's like, no, I wasn't sitting there counseling my kids, but I was very sensitive to the curriculum. I think you heard me mention it before. I had them write poetry, but I also started doing this whole song unit where everyone wrote their own songs, because
Mm.
I knew they needed to get healing and comfort. And I know music does that. And then I had them share all the lyrics and the songs that they wrote. It was beautiful. And then we made these class books out of it. So what am I doing is I'm empowering the ability for them to heal. I'm helping them give something to reach for, instead of feeling like they're going down with the ship, so to speak. I'm saying, not only am I going to give you a lifesaver and a lifeline, but you're going to get back up on that ship, and you're going to get to land one day, and you're going to build your home. That's my job as an educator. That's the thing that I really focused on. And part of building your own life and thriving is having an education. So I said, we're going to work hard, and I'm going to tell you why you're working hard. I want to see you have a thriving life. And it starts with the GED. It starts with a high school diploma. We got to get you out there. And some of them didn't even see the value of that. And that's part of at-risk thinking mentality. So meeting them where they're at is teaching them thrival skills. It's too low to just say, just survive life. I wanted them to feel this empowerment, that they actually got to be something in life, and they got to contribute, and they got to give back. Again, I'll fast forward those life lessons. That's what carries me over into coaching.
Mm.
Nobody has to be a victim to their life or their jobs. You don't have to. That's survival mentality. Thriving mentality allows you to start taking control of your life and saying, I get to do something about it. As children, when we've had a lot of things come at us, it's very easy to feel the hopelessness because our own adults are failing us.
Mhm.
As educators, how we just um, sensitively handle this without directly saying a lot of stuff is the beauty of it. You don't have to sit there and counsel the kids. You just get to provide a safe place and adjust your curriculum and instruction and your tone in the classroom to deal with what it is that they're facing on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom. I was saying to you before we hit record, just, there's another level of danger that being a teacher brings with it that I it's impossible to even think about. But they're the shepherds, and they've got these little
Mhm,
lambs, and it's their job to keep them safe. Yes,
mhm,
you have to educate them. Yes, you have to, help
mhm.
them grow up and walk alongside them. But first and foremost, you keep them safe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what an awesome but heavy responsibility that is for our educators. And how grateful, I can just say how grateful as a parent that teachers are out there willing to get up and go every day and wake up
Yeah.
early and go long into the night,
Yeah.
grading papers to do this work. That it doesn't go unnoticed,
Mhm.
even though maybe sometimes it feels that way.
Well, and I even just saw some of the faces across the news of these educators who literally lost their lives in the classroom.
Mm.
That was not something I really faced. I remember one lockdown, we were all huddled under our desks, and there was a perceived shooter on campus, and that was rather terrifying. But what educators are facing today, just even a couple decades later, is just, my heart goes out to them, because they didn't sign up for this. They signed up to empower our youth. and they're having to fight for the defend for everyone's survival. They didn't prepare us for that as educators. And I think that's where anything I can do to support our educators, um, creating safe spaces in our classrooms and finding ways to do that. I think that's something that I've, as a leadership coach, feels like I can be a part of that conversation. And I know we're going to be doing we're joining a conference, a mental wellness conference this fall, right, Natalie?
That's right.
Just being able to support our educators on how to really nurture the spirit of our children and to address things in the classroom and really set the tone in a violent world. And that's not easy to do. That's when we're busy trying to teach reading and writing and arithmetic,
Yeah.
and we haven't been trained on how to create mental wellness in the classroom. I mean, that's a daunting task.
Yeah.
And I want to say it's a little easier than you think. I don't want to dismiss how challenging it can be, but I want to say it's easier than you think if you listen to your heart as an educator. Your children are telling you all the time. They're stressed, they're scared, they're excited. Christmas is coming. They're telling you all the time. And as we learn how to read the room and listen to our own instinct, this is what I see great educators do. And to watch, even like I said, my daughter's high school teacher, and she's a very beloved educator. Well, I know why. She's caring for their spirits, right? She sees the spirit of the child, not just the curriculum of French. I just thought it was fascinating. She's a French teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful.
One of the things I want to leave our educators who are also our leaders, our prominent leaders in our society, is the 3 C's. I think it's good to just kind of speak to that, Natalie. Giving the opportunity to grow our clarity, to really build our confidence, and to engage our courage. That's the process of a thriving life. And people love talking about thriving here. We hear it all the time. Thrive, 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 thriving, thriving, thriving. We don't hear a lot of conversations around what that actually means. So here I am as an educator. I'm a huge believer on making application. I don't want to just talk about thriving. I want to give really clear application of how we can, as educators, as we lead our children, how we grow their clarity. And I will say, as we look at 3C living, clarity is really about resting. Think about pulling over your car and it figures out where you're going. You cannot figure out where you're going as you're running, 90 miles down the freeway. You've got to pull over your car and reorient, check out the map, check out the GPS, reorient. Clarity is really about slowing down and kind of pausing. So helping our children doing that ourselves as an educator and a leader in our society allows us to start really growing our own clarity. And we can only offer what it is that we grow internally. So that's the thing I want to just leave with our educators. The second piece is really that confidence. Confidence has everything to do with what we're believing. When I started assessing what our children were believing, which was a hopelessness, I don't think I'm going to make it to 25. I don't even think I'll ever go to college. I'll never have enough money. I won't have enough food. I'm going to end up in the gangs like my cousin. These were all beliefs that I saw and heard my students saying. And I thought that's what's infecting their confidence. So in order to build their confidence, we get to go after their beliefs. And so I would start challenging it. I remember doing one exercise in my classroom. I said, write down your top 5 goals. And the majority of the girls at that time were saying, I want to get pregnant, have a baby. Then I want to finish high school, maybe go to college and maybe get a job.
Wow.
And I said, all these are wonderful things. Can we just talk about the order of them?
Yeah.
I would love for you to see you finish high school first, even go on and get an AA, and then maybe even a BA, and then maybe consider having a child and maybe getting married. Can we just talk about that? They had never heard of that order because the emphasis was so much on becoming a mother and a parent. They didn't know that was even an option. So I affirmed that that's a beautiful goal to want to be a parent. I love that goal. I just want to help you. If you want to be a great parent, you want to make sure you be able to provide for those kids and have a home for them. And you want to be able to feel really proud about modeling that to them. And the way we do that, we get a high school diploma. We get what we need in order to get a job. That was a whole new concept for them.
Wow.
So just understanding where their beliefs are, that affects their confidence. And it was really sweet to watch them realize that they had other options.
Hmm.
And then the last piece of courage is really, it's all about the action plan. As we teach people about their clarity, we rest and we slow down, as we help check their beliefs, the last step is really to make an action plan based on that true belief, not your false one, but your true one. Once you've all decided, like, well, you know what, Mrs. Pitty, I do want to finish high school. In fact, I want to go on and become an attorney. I think I want to be a doctor. They started listing these higher goals. And I was like, you can do it. You can do it. You can totally do it. Okay, here's the path to get there.
Yeah.
So then our action plan became to be connected to their true belief of they get to go after the life they want. And my job as an educator is to show them a path to get there. Oh,
Mhm.
you want to become a writer? Okay, great. We start writing. We got to learn how to write first. We got to get you through school. Then you get to go to writing school, and you get to learn this in college, and you actually can start writing a book. Heck, you can start writing one now. And then here's how we start talking to publishers. Learning how to do all of that and teach them there's a path to get there. And it's not this massive gap between the dream they have for their life and the inability to know how to get there.
Yeah.
My job as an educator is to help close that gap. And that's what I believe great educators are doing all over the place. And I watch them do it for my own children. And I'm just always cheering them on, because the way an educator speaks to children is very different than how a parent can be heard by a child, right?
True.
So many times, and many of the educators have no idea, especially in high school. You just don't have access to many of the educators. You just don't even know what they look like. You might hear their names, but again, God bless this French teacher who knew how to bring in this calming app for her whole French class, and was such a beautiful gift. My daughter took 3 years of French because of this. I don't think she would have, but she did.
Yeah.
So I think as we look at really creating thrival skills, not survival skills, I'd
Yeah.
like us to just keep shooting higher. And that goes back to 3C living, engaging their clarity by resting, engaging their confidence and building that by checking their beliefs, and then engaging their courage.
That's wonderful, Heather. Such
And
good advice. It's a great game plan
mm,
um, for kids and for the parents and the teachers.
yeah. Do you have any last encouragement? You're a parent of 4 kids.
For kids, yeah.
You had to think about that. 4 kids, one who's just recently graduated.
He did. Yeah. And I think, like I shared earlier, my older two went to public school, and my younger two were homeschooling. I'm homeschooling them. And it's a lot of work. One of the things I didn't realize, that if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, you're probably going to roll your eyes, but I had no idea how much planning went into the school day. Like, we don't just sit down and pull out a worksheet and have it, it's just an enormous amount of work and planning and making lists and, yeah, but you know what? I really love it. I really love being able to teach my younger two. They're 9 and 11, and they're at the age they haven't hit puberty, so they're still sweet, sweet and innocent.
Yeah.
And it's just been a real honor to be their teacher. And yeah, I don't want to go off on a tangent about homeschool, but one of the reasons we decided not to put them back in school once COVID slowed down and we could have sent them back is just being able to hold on to this connection that I've established with them. I would miss it terribly, even though I'd have way more time to to do your podcast work, to get guests on podcasts. But yeah, I'd have more time. But honestly, it's such a sweet gift. As they get older, that's going to fall away. And trying to seize the opportunity that I didn't take with the older two. One, because COVID hadn't happened, and there was no way I was going to homeschool my kids. I was growing my editing business, and I'm in graduate school, and I've got 10 plates in the air, and so so grateful for the education that they've gotten. And yeah, my oldest has just graduated, and he had a great high school experience, really good, some great teachers, some not so great teachers. And I think that's anywhere. And some that really poured into him and in fact shaped, I think, what he wants to do with his life, which is ultimately he wants to go into music education because of the music teacher he had, because of the choir director he had. And so, yeah, I mean, I think my final thought on this is just for teachers out there that you really are shaping culture, and that's probably not talked about a lot on the day-to-day in the hallways or in your staff meetings, but and this is completely separate than from the curriculum, because I know you don't control that, but just pouring into these young students, teachers who, hugged my daughter in second grade every day. They walked in the classroom. She gave them all hugs if they were comfortable with hugs, just, the little things you're doing to pour into them, to show them that you see them is so valuable. And just, don't stop. As weary as you may get, or as, frightened as you might be some days in your classroom. I mean, the work you're doing is really holy work. It's very sacred what you're doing, and so grateful, and don't give up.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Setting culture, Natalie. That's a great thing to end on. Thank you, educators, for setting culture. Thank you as a leadership coach for influencing our leadership development and our new and upcoming leaders. I'm probably getting so many of them that you've been teaching. The older I get, the more I'm getting these younger and younger employees that I get to work with. And I even hear some of them speak very fondly of some of their teachers. I think teachers have such an impact. So thank you for your leadership in our world and our communities, and we're rooting for you.
Right.
Take care, everyone.